It is time for another edition of HuskerChat. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment. I'm Jayson Jorgensen. Once again, we are joined by Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online. Big game for Nebraska. It's Oklahoma week. Before we talk about the Sooners, we'll take a look back at the win against Buffalo. Sean, I thought it was a workmanlike victory. It certainly wasn't perfect, but it seemed last Saturday the Huskers took another step in the right direction.
Yeah, it was a 28-3 win, but in all respects, there were two touchdowns that were controversially taken off the board that, probably should have stood. And then there were 3 field goals Nebraska missed in that game. So you break it down, there were a lot of points left off the board that probably should have counted, and Nebraska still won 28-3. But they got the explosive plays. I thought that was a big part of the win on Saturday. ADRIAN MARTINEZ had a 71-yard run, produced 2 65-plus yard passes. And then they even got one from Logan Smothers that was about a 55-yard pass to Chris Hickman. Those 4 plays were longer than any 4 plays a year ago as far as runs and passes go. And they had that all in the same game. And I thought that was a very good sign that the offense was able to produce some home runs to maybe make up for some of the efficiency that they were having early in the game with the run game.
How about what we've seen from ADRIAN MARTINEZ the last couple of weeks? Granted, it hasn't been against, high-level Power 5 competition, but he certainly has played much better.
Yeah, ADRIAN MARTINEZ has been kind of an eraser in respects. The 71-yard run, a lot of it had to do with the way Nebraska's offensive line was getting blown up, and he just had to take off and go, and he made a play there, and he looks more comfortable. He was pressured a lot. I mean, he dropped back 24 times to throw, and he was pressured on 14 of those dropbacks. Many of those, in fact, 9 of those 14 pressures were on 4-man rushes, meaning there was no blitz involved. So the offensive line has had their issues, and I think ADRIAN has done his best to try to mask some of that. And I think that's maybe the big picture fear when you talk to educated fans. They're smart enough to see, like, this offensive line is going to cause Nebraska some issues if they don't protect better. You can't expect ADRIAN to always do what he's been doing the last couple of weeks.
Do you think that's a talent issue with the offensive line or an experience, or is it just a little bit of both still?
Yeah, it's really hard to pin your finger on because there's good players in terms of what they were ranked. And, is it inexperience? Is it scheme? Is it coaching? Is it technique? Is it all of those things? Probably so. But yeah, you just wouldn't expect. I mean, Turner Corcoran, he picked Nebraska over Ohio State and Oklahoma. Bryce Benhart was a national top 250 right tackle, and Jorgensen has played well this year. Those 2 guards, I think those have been the guys that have struggled more than anything. So I don't know if they're going to look at maybe changing it up if it continues. But there is some good backup players there too. Like Nuri Newelly came in and did some nice things. Teddy Prohaska, the true freshman of Elkhorn South, he's another guy to watch closely.
Today on HuskerChat, we're joined by Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online. HuskerChat brought to you by Acres Equipment. Well, Sean, it's finally here. Nebraska, Oklahoma. These 2 programs have not met since 2010. A lot of talk this summer about Nebraska trying to get out of this game. What's the first emotion or first thought you have when you think of Nebraska versus Oklahoma?
Well, I was born in 1980, so I wasn't around for the game of the century. But I know obviously what those games in the mid 80s meant. Just and Oklahoma won those games. I mean, they had Nebraska's number in the 80s. I mean, they pretty much prevented Tom Osborne from playing for a national championship in the mid to late 80s after that 83 era was over. That group struggled to beat Barry Switzer and those OU teams. And then the series somewhat went dead in the 90s. And it didn't really get going again until Bob Stoops got there. And in 2000, that game in Norman where he beat Nebraska with Eric Crouch and Frank Solich, that was kind of what I think catapulted the Sooner program to get to where they're at still to this day, 20 plus years later. Nebraska was up 14-0 in that game. I still remember to this day. It was an 11 a.m. game, and we were broadcasting shows for the radio station I worked for in Omaha at that time. And we're down in Norman for Thursday, Friday, and that was just kind of like the turn of their program, with what Bob Stoops did. And they've been able to sustain that all of this time since the year 2000, which you've got to give a lot of credit to Joe Castiglione and the administration there, that they've been able to keep that rolling after almost about a 10-year dark period of OU football.
How do you see this one on Saturday? Nebraska is certainly a prohibitive underdog, and it would make sense Nebraska would roll in there as a three touchdown dog in this one. What's the recipe for Nebraska to hang around in this thing and have a shot in the fourth?
Yeah, I think the recipe is playing physical, sound football, executing in the run game, protecting Martinez. Obviously, the special teams miscues can't be there. We've seen one every week, Jayson, every week. But yeah, if I'm picking sensibly here, I'll take OU by 10 to 14 points right now. I just don't know if Nebraska has enough consistency to score, 40 plus points against a team like OU, because that to me is what it's going to take. It's going to take probably to win this game for Nebraska 38 to 42 points. And can they do that? Can they do that? I think Nebraska's defense will get enough stops, but can the offense put together enough drives to keep up with a team like OU?
Well, it'll be fun to see on Saturday. I know a lot of people are expecting a blowout. Sometimes it seems when people think that the opposite happens. So who knows? Maybe Scott Frost and his bunch show up and put a scare into the Sooners on Saturday. Sean, as always, we appreciate your time. Have a good trip down there.
Hey, thanks, Jayson.
You bet. And that was Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online, joining us for Husker Chat. Once again, it's brought to you by Acres Equipment. I'm Jayson Jorgensen. Thanks for tuning in.